Coming up on Be Kind, Let's Rewind.
Today we have special guest, Dr. Brad Balukjian. Did I get the name right?
You did. You nailed it. Yeah.
Boom! Drink.
Oh, damn it. Damn it.
You got lucky, Chris. You got lucky.
You have a PhD,
Yeah.
correct? What is that in?
It's in entomology, studying bugs. So I discovered all these species of insects in Tahiti. I actually named one after Harrison Ford.
What?
You're
Nice.
Me, what?
So you were going to write a biography on the Iron Sheik, correct? Was that
Yeah,
the
well,
original?
that was back in 2005 where the book starts.
Right.
Pretty much all those guys, if you were a heel, a bad guy in the 70s and 80s, almost everyone got stabbed.
Yeah.
In character, like going and coming and going to the ring.
Yo, Brian, give me my money or I'm going to stab you in the fucking stomach.
True. Wax Pack, Six Pack. Your website is what? Is it the bradpack.com?
Yeah. I remember my eyes were big when I started, like, oh, I wonder what it's like to jump off the top rope. And by the end, I was like rolling out of the ring. Like,
Yep. Nope.
I bumped into the corner of my kitchen island the other day and immediately went for the Advil.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Cue music.
Would you state your name, please?
I'm AC. You know who I am, damn it.
Welcome to Be Kind, Let's Rewind, the nostalgia podcast no one asked for, with your hosts, Chris, Leaf, and Shadwick.
like a two-hand choke.
Yeah, two-hand show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Be Kind, Let's Rewind, the nostalgia podcast that no one asked for. Today we have special guest, Dr. Brad Balukjian, on with us. Brad, congrats on the PhD, and
Congrats.
did I get the name right?
You did. You nailed it. Yeah.
Boom! Drink.
Oh, damn it. Damn it.
You got lucky, Chris. You got lucky.
It does help that we literally put a pronunciation guide in the book jacket, but
Yeah.
Dude, I'll tell you, it
He
really
cheated.
when you listen to both your audiobooks and I listened to you pronounce your own name. So they didn't know that little tidbit.
Well, I struggled. I had to do a retake on that.
Did you?
That was my joke. I kept on my joke.
Welcome to the show, man. I know that
idiot.
by reading your book, we are Braves fans, and you're Phillies fans. So we're gonna tread lightly on it today. But I will say, I think Shadwick can agree with me. We've been all right with that Bryce Harper guy since he almost killed Angel Hernandez.
Dusty's going to stand in.
So I think since then, like we were like, you know what, he's not that bad. So
Right?
Man,
Hey,
I hate him so much. I sure wish he played for us.
yeah, 100%.
he's the kind of guy that you hate until he's your teammate.
Absolutely, man. So I wanted to start the show off today telling a story because in your book, you talk about the relationship with your dad, going to baseball games, keeping score and all that stuff. So I wanted to say, like, one of my favorite memories with my dad is we're in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So a little-known baseball player named Michael Jordan was coming to town when I was about, 14. My dad went and, stood outside before the internet, fellas, so you had to actually go outside for tickets and wait. Got his tickets. I actually got to see Michael Jordan go 0 for 3.
Yeah.
But it was cool to be there and see him.
He had a lot of 0 for 3s that year.
He did have a lot of 0 for
That's
3s,
few,
man. Leaf, do you have any memories, man?
The biggest memories I've had with my father in baseball were probably when he coached the Little League.
Yeah.
For me,
yeah.
I played I was pretty good as a kid. I did All-Star for quite a few years, and I mean we played for a few mock Braves teams. That seems to be like them. And I'm Native American. My father's full-blooded Cherokee and Sioux, so we often got that moniker. Needless to say, so I'm sure that was
PC
pure
80s,
coincidence.
Yeah,
you,
PC
you weren't
80s.
you weren't called the Savages.
Believe it or not, that was floated. That was floated by me, and it was rejected. So.
Rejected, nice.
Yeah.
Shadwick, you got one, man?
My dad wasn't really into baseball too much. He was into boxing a lot, but my son, I think we've missed 3 Father's Day ball games in the past 15 years, I guess.
Over here.
Yeah, we went this past Sunday and it was hot as hell. I mean, I think we might have changed that to the a Saturday night before Father's Day game.
Yeah, that's a better option.
One of the first times. When was Dan Ugly in Atlanta?
I blocked that out, but it was probably like 2008, 2009.
For whatever kind of baseball player he is a great guy. We got to meet him.
Well, you have to be when you're that bad.
Well,
I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I mean,
Sorry.
he could rip your arms off and beat you to death with them.
Yeah, it still doesn't change sub Mendoza average.
But for that the 1 or 2 years he was there that we actually locked him. My son got to meet him. We were there on a Father's Day game, and he came over, took a picture, signed some autographs, or whatever. The next year, I think he was having problems seeing the ball.
Yeah, he went to go have LASIK.
Yeah, he had LASIK. Fast forward a couple of years later, I had LASIK, and it was the same doctor that did all of the Atlanta sports teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sitting in the chair, like I'm already like dilated, ready to go, and I go, "You didn't do Dan Ugly's, did you?" And the doctor's like, "You really want to ask that right now?" And then I was like,
No.
Ask what?
Do you have any one special moment that sticks out with you and your dad going to games?
Oh man, I mean, the one I wrote about in the book was memorable because we were going to see my favorite player for the Phillies, who was no one else's favorite player.
Right. Yeah.
Mitch Williams.
Well, man, I still feel bad. Like I was a pretty nice, mild-mannered kid, and when Joe Carter hit that home run, I went to my bedroom and grabbed the nearest Mitch Williams card and did things to that card that I will never be forgiven for. Like I should be in Guantanamo Bay for what I did.
Waterboarded right now.
What I did to that card, and it's like
the card is like an effigy.
I think back, and then it was like nailed to my wall for like all of junior high. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my god, that was a monster.
So he just completely lost it, right?
I mean, all you have to know about baseball being a mental game is look at Mitch Williams' career.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Because I think he washed out after one more year in Houston. He just completely fell apart, and
it's just so weird. Like sports, how mental they are and all that. I really related to you as kind of a baseball card nerd. Like when you're kind of younger in the wax pack, which we'll kind of get to all this stuff. But I was a Braves fan, so I think I'm a 49ers fan too. So the Giants beat the 49ers in the NFC Championship game in 1990 or 91, which was my first heartbreak as a sports fan. Then the Braves lost in 7 to the Twins the following year.
Right.
And I had this little game that you could play with baseball cards, and I would play 7. It was like roll the dice and whatever their average is.
Where you try to slit your wrist with them?
Yeah, that's basically. But I would play this game.
Death by 1,000 paper.
It was, man. I would play this game and reenact the World Series in my brain over and over again to try to be like, no, they really won. Like, it's okay. It's okay.
Have you sought professional help?
I have sought professional help, which brings
a great
segue to Booze of the Week. Get out of the street. All right, guys. So for Booze of the Week this week, and you'll find out why, because it'll lead to something later on in the podcast, I'm drinking Always Sunny's very own 4 Walls whiskey. A little tasty beverage. Pretty solid whiskey if they got it in your area and you're a whiskey drinker. Not bad for the price, man. So
are you guys Always Sunny fans?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
absolutely.
I'm notoriously a good 18 to 20 years late to the party.
Okay.
And so I just started watching It's Always Sunny on DVD.
Oh man,
nice.
This past week.
Oh really?
So I have a question as a complete newcomer to It's Always Sunny. Like, have you guys watched it consistently over the years?
Yeah, I've me and my wife used to watch it going to bed every night.
So they have. I've watched it once through. I'm more like you. I was kind of late to the party.
Okay.
I think I'm caught up within a couple of seasons, maybe.
I'm as well too. Yeah, that's about why we.
So does this show not get the credit it deserves?
I think now that it's been around so long, I think it does. Me and my wife actually went up to Philadelphia to see them do a live performance last year. Huh. They had a podcast, and so they all came out on stage and did a live podcast or whatever.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But it was cool. It was cool to see them live. But I mean, it was like a amphitheater. It was completely sold out. There was like probably 14,000 people there. So I think they always set FX records, but I don't know what that means, because I never see actual numbers. So, but I think as far as like people that are big comedy fans, they're held in pretty high regard.
Okay. How far into it are you, Brad?
No, I'm just like season 1, like
oh wow, dude.
So is it, Chris? Is it season 5 maybe where they take the handcuffs off and?
I don't know, man. They pretty much come up swinging in season 1.
I mean, as far as dropping F-bombs and.
Oh yeah, no, I don't know.
That wasn't right out of the gate because
there's no F-bombs.
Danny DeVito slid in season 2, and that's when it really like kind of picked up. So.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think when Danny DeVito like came in, I think the gloves sort of came off. At least that was my impression too.
I think you're gonna like it, man. You're gonna enjoy the ride if you're a comedy fan.
I look forward to it.
So, Leaf, what do you got, man? What are you drinking?
Man, I'm drinking a little bit. I'm trying to stay classy. Let me move it over here. Yeah, a little bit of Pinot Noir tonight. Wow. The wife poured me a little scotch. Nice. So yeah, we're trying to relax a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Just chilling.
She's a lot fancier than you are.
Yeah,
Shadrick, what are you rocking there, brother?
I'm still doing the Chris Stapleton Traveler whiskey.
There you go.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay.
It's pretty good, man.
Brad, what concoction do you have there, my friend?
Well, unnamed until recently. This is a drink that doesn't exist. So it's just all of our imagination until it's in my liver. And
there it is.
This is a mix of mezcal, cherry, and cranberry juice.
We gotta lace it with something sweeter. Add a little sweetening. Oh, Deandra, could you be a darling and run down and get Daddy some antifreeze?
Dude, all the good things. With so many good things in there, how could it be bad for you?
It'll get you drunk.
That's what it is, man.
That's what we're aiming at.
Yeah, dude. So now that we're nice and fueled up, you just recently got off a book tour, did you not? For those that don't know, Wax Pack, 6-pack. Your website is thebradpack.com?
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, if you have Audible, I was lucky enough to have the Audible subscription, Wax Pack. You can get it for free. It's an amazing listen.
It's on Spotify too, I believe, for free. So
oh, nice. Yeah. So go listen to that because it's amazing. You do a great job narrating it, by the way.
Thank you.
How hard was that for you to go to that? Because actually, Leaf is a voiceover artist as well. So he's
freelance.
In your pain. Yeah.
Many voiceover artists steer clear of audiobooks for obvious reasons. I'm interested to hear your honest opinion about doing.
You said I can't swear, right?
No.
No, you absolutely can. Yeah. We're trying to behave on your behalf.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay. Well, it's really fucking hard. That's the answer.
Well, I was wondering if we were going to get to that because in the first bit of the Wax Pack, you're talking about. I think it was like Christian radio was on something.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody woke up and it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, my buddy Jesse was like, what are you listening to? So when you record an audiobook, you're in this little tiny phone booth with like egg crates on the walls,
right? Yeah, man,
for sound stuff, and you can't like move at all. You can barely breathe.
Oh, dude!
So because it picks up everything, right? And you haven't realized the grotesqueness of the human body until you've had the headphones on and listen for like 5 hours while you sit totally still to what comes out of your body. And like it doesn't. No, if you ate too recently, it sucks because then your stomach just starts making all these noises. And you're burping and you're farting. If you didn't eat recently enough, then your stomach starts growling.
Right.
So you're just like cursing your stomach the whole time, and you have no control over your stomach.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't be like stomach stop, right?
Exactly.
So, and every time you have a noise, you have to stop and do it again.
So did you go to a professional booth, I assume? Did you have to go somewhere?
I had to go to a studio, and there was an engineer and all that.
Leaf has a studio in his house that he built. But
so you're just giving me so many flashbacks and memories. I've been doing this about 5-6 years, and I started with the egg crates like on the walls, and I'd had to learn how to do all my own editing and things of that nature. And everything you're saying is 100% true. For those of you who don't or have never recorded anything. Chris and I, like I said, we're in a punk rock band. That was my first experience. But moving into doing, freelance voiceover artistry, that's exactly what it is. And you exemplify the perfect reason why a lot of voiceover artists sort of shy away from doing audiobooks because not only is there all of those things that you said to have to consider and deal with, it is hours and hours of just trying to do it right. And like you said, starting all over again. If there's a gurgle or a mistake or a fart or your mouth is dry and it's clicking. It's just
they'll have you eat a crispy apple and then drink a sip of tea, and you're like, okay.
There's so many tricks and not all of them work. Everyone used to what is it, the banaka?
By the way, do you have a mint? Perhaps some banaka?
The spray or whatever it was.
I didn't get banaka.
People would tell me to use that. It doesn't work. It didn't work for me.
Leaf would always say,
I'd be pissed scared I'd get a boner or fucking fart or something.
I would say that.
He would say
quote
that,
me on.
That's how I feel when I get a massage, but not a
not the food.
Yeah, dude. The voiceover stuff, though, for real, like I said, listen to both of them. You did a great job. Great job. It just
thank you.
felt natural,
I think
which is hard to do.
In the vein of books like you write, I think it really adds to it, though, that you do the audiobook.
I like to think I'm like the Harrison Ford of audiobooks. Like I do my own stunts, It's like,
that's absolutely
It just
true.
means to me, like when an author does because we have a pretty long commute, me and Chadwick both to work, so listen to a lot of audiobooks, and it has a better feel when and you don't mispronounce names. Like,
right.
I know you I guess you were raised in the Northeast, so you had a lot of the WWWF stuff up there. We were kind of NWA down in this area, and every book I've listened to on wrestling that calls Ole Anderson Anderson, and it drives me crazy.
Right.
It happens all the time, man.
Yeah,
all the freaking time. After you did your book tour, you got any stories from the actual book tour itself? How many cities did you end up hitting?
Ooh, I think I did maybe 15 or 16.
Yeah, man, it was
places.
You just like traveling there, man. You basically are a professional wrestler after two books.
Except
and this.
I didn't have a chair smashed over my head.
There's still time.
There's time.
I mean, I've had some hangovers that felt like that.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Not. So I got around. I was all the way out to St. Louis and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and nothing. I'm trying to think. Nothing like crazy stood out, but it was really. I mean, it was cool that a couple places people were like, "Oh, I drove 2 hours to meet you." And
Dude, that's a good feeling.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I felt like I needed to reimburse them for gas. Thank you very much.
So were you able to do all of your interviews in person?
The book tour was like going to bookstores and signing books. So all of that was in person. I've done plenty of interviews online, just to talk about the book. But
I'm sorry. As far as when you're writing the book, you were doing all your interviews. Were those in person or?
Yeah, mostly. I drove over 12,000 miles to go to wherever people were. I would go to them. I did a few
they weren't all at Hogan's Hangout.
Yeah, but I wish they had been. That would have
out.
Would have made it. I mean, Jimmy Hart was there, but Jimmy Hart's always there.
He's always there. Yeah,
yeah.
I've actually met Jimmy a few times. Really nice guy. I actually got to talk music with him for a while, but he will.
Well, that's the part of his story that's underappreciated. Is he was a really great musician before he was in wrestling.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, go look up the Gentrys, I believe is who it was. The Keep On Dancing, that is Jimmy Hart. In that.
Well, Chris kind of suckered me into this tonight because I thought we were interviewing the drummer for Ruckus tonight.
It's actually Ruckus.
We can probably get him on here if we need to.
So you got to do also promoting the book. You've done. Didn't you do one with 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff?
I did a few with Bischoff. I did a few with Bischoff. I did one with Chris Jericho. That was
the Talk to Jericho was good, man. He actually was the reason that I had the idea about the "get your name right" joke.
Yes.
So he leaned into it. He was like, "Look, I'm probably going to mess this up," and you're like, "Yeah, man, that's great. Let's go. Let's move."
Yeah. I did Jim Cornette. That was fun.
Oh wow, yeah. I bet that's he's a guilty pleasure of mine. I got to meet him too. I actually used to I used to wrestle locally and regionally for about like 15, 16 years.
Wow.
So I got to meet a lot of those dudes doing that stuff, but it was it's great for your back later on in life.
Yeah.
But
Works out.
when were you like, man, I'm just going to be a writer? Like, when did that hit you?
That's I've probably done between the wax pack and the six pack. I would estimate I've done like over 200 interviews, and I've never been asked that question. So that's
Really?
a great question.
Let's rewind. We delivered, baby.
We did it. Clip it. Clip it.
What? That's pretty shocking.
When did I decide to become a writer? I think probably. Well, it's funny because you think back, and I remember being in high school, and I did things that back then were weird, but now I look back, it's like that was like the genesis of being a writer. Like I would like go on vacation and I would like write everything down. Like I would like, take notes. And
Really?
Okay. And I would want to like evaluate everything and rate things. And so I had that kind of brain early on, like somehow documenting stuff like made it stick for me.
Have you seen professional?
Yeah.
So but it wasn't until like after college that I had my first journalism job and was like, okay, like I'm getting paid for this. But I was, like right out of college. That was my start, and then I bounced back and forth with other things, teaching and doing science.
Right.
Yeah.
So with journalism, was that with a newspaper or magazine?
Yeah, I worked for a magazine called Islands Magazine, which is now gone, but it was a travel magazine, and it was a great. I learned it. I was a fact checker for the magazine, and it was. Oh, wow. I learned more random shit, like just doing that job because we had to confirm everything. You're like, you're fact checking a story about some island off of the coast of Tunisia and asking the local people, like from like 8,000 miles away, like, do the camels have one hump or two humps? Like that's the that's the degree of fact checking.
Yeah, so real journalism rather than
just get it to the press first,
as opposed to what we generally get. Like so
and then just when you thought like no one, like who gives a shit how many humps the camel has, then you would get like a letter from like the world's expert in dromedary camels, and they're like, technically the dromedary's range is constricted to northwestern Eurasia.
And the actual end of that later just be like,
and then your editor calls you into the office and chews you out. So
you're in trouble for the camel humps.
For the camel,
yeah, the camel hump write up in your file forever.
Yeah.
So
I think your experience as a journalist was a lot different than mine. Mine was more like someone got mad about their neighbor put a fence up and
okay, well, hey man, I have a lot of respect for reporters who do that kind of work because like you're pounding the pavement on the street.
So I actually, in high school, we had an apprenticeship program, and I got to write for the local sports, basically for the local paper. They just had me go around, do a lot of high school sports, and then just kind of, puff pieces or whatever.
Yeah.
And then several years later, there was a little contest. Basically, our major newspaper in the area, they put an ad in the paper. They were looking for I think it's called an associate or correspondent, maybe. And they just gave me a topic. I wrote on it, and they're like, "Yeah, we'd like for you to write for us." And I never even set foot inside the building.
All
trusted you,
but the highlight of that was I broke the story on a bank robbery.
Whoa!
And
were you there at the robbery?
I was.
He was the robber. Actually,
he was the robber.
Yeah. I was. I had an inside. Had a person on the inside. No, I was. That was
Spider-Man situation.
Yeah. I was driving by and I saw a bunch of cop cars had the parking lot blocked off. So I stopped and called the editor. I was like, "Hey, something's going on here," and that was one of the last stories I wrote because they would edit everything so heavily.
Yeah.
I think they changed it to. The suspect strolled into the bank, and I was like, you might as well just say sashayed.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, when did you realize you had such a gift for painting a picture like you do? Like in your books, I was actually
you're very descriptive.
I was kind of worried of like getting you on here because then it'd be like if you wrote a blog about us, you'd be like, Chris's 44-year-old face looked dead and withered from life. Like,
I am recording all this and going to do that after. So
okay, good. Yes, it was my biggest fear, so I knew. But man, seriously,
it's funny you say that because I've like more than once been on dates with women, and afterwards or in the date they're like, "You're not like." This is not research. And I'm like, no, don't worry. I mean, it's a fair question because in the Wax Pack, I do talk about like women that I've dated and like being on the road and using Tinder and all that.
You should have just actually looked him in the face and been like, I was hoping this would be a puff piece.
Yeah, I was. I'll let you know after you make breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. But again, like it just. When I was listening to it, I was like, man, like you can see these people's faces, like when you're talking, when you're writing about them, everything. So
well, thanks. I mean, that's like if you say that, then I've done my job, right? Because that's what I'm going for. Is like it's a very cinematic style of writing, where you're trying to like create a scene.
Yeah.
Who was the player from Montreal? The guy that was selling real estate or something when you.
Oh, well, Rance.
Yeah, you were describing him like a weak chin. He still has his mustache, but it's a little.
Well, it's funny you say that you bring up. So the two guys that were with me in that chapter, my two best friends, the guy that was like, "What the fuck is on the radio?" Yeah, it was his brother. So this day still is like gives me shit about like using the phrase "weak chin" because he's like he thought it was so insulting, and I was like. I mean, if he has a weak chin, he's got a weak chin.
I saw it in I saw it in my brain when you said it, and then I immediately thought of Glass Joe from Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
Yeah. By the way, we've been playing that all day.
Have you really?
Oh my god, yes!
Yeah. Like on the Wii, like I mean, I'm not into. I don't play any of the modern video games, but like my 11-year-old nephew, I walk into the living room today, and he's like. What do you think about bald bull? I was like, that's a great question. Like,
oh my God, yes.
Dude,
finally the real question.
I'm like, fuck bald bull. That guy, I could never get that hop right.
No, couldn't get it timed right. You end up throwing the controller. Those controllers are pretty beefy, though. I threw a couple against my brother's head.
They had to be.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question for you. You guys are you're into nostalgia, right? 80s, 90s. Yeah. So with all the obsession with intellectual property and making movies and shows, why has no one made a Mike Tyson's Punch-Out movie or show? You could have like all these characters, like
you could make a cartoon of that really easy.
Don Flamenco and
you would have the seasons with the fighters that he's fighting. Yeah. It would write the episode for you. It's easy.
You're 100% right.
I think too. I bet Tyson, because remember, Nintendo went away from Tyson at some point. They pulled his name. It became Punch Out.
Punch Out, yeah.
Yeah, but now again, I think that they're calling it Mike Tyson's Punch Out again or whatever. Okay. They're calling it Jake Paul's Punch
Out. Enough time has passed, but yeah, you're absolutely right that I don't know why anyone hasn't taken those characters and ran with it, like in animation or otherwise, because you're right. The characters are so distinctive. Their backgrounds, you can almost fill them in yourself,
like kind of Cobra Kai style. Like take like Little Mac is your protagonist, right?
Yeah.
And he's like this underdog, but then make it really funny and ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm gonna be straight up honest and pissed off when that movie or when that show comes out in 6 months. I'm gonna know someone just jacked your idea off of YouTube. Yeah. I'm gonna be really mad. I mean, I'm gonna watch it. Don't get me wrong. I'm still gonna watch it. I'll be mad.
Was it Peacock that made Twisted Metal?
Yeah,
recently. Yeah,
so
it was really good, man.
Yeah, I didn't see it. The Little Mac's trainer was named Doc, by the way. So,
right, Doc.
There you
just
go.
Want to say,
throw your name out there. Maybe you can. Do a
he amazing. That's an amazing idea. But
you started to write the Wax Pack. I don't know if you want to get into this. If you don't, it's totally okay. But your original idea is you were going to write a biography on Iron Sheik, correct?
You mean the 6-pack?
So, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. So you were going to write a biography on the Iron Sheik, correct? Was that
well, that was back in 2005 where the book starts.
Right.
The plan was, so the job I was just talking about, working as the fact checker, I left that job to go live near the Iron Sheik outside of Atlanta.
Okay.
Back in 2005 to collaborate with him on a biography. That was the plan. That was what I was there for, and that's not what happened.
Right. Well, he was your favorite wrestler, though, correct? Growing up, like
yeah. So I love
him?
the Iron Sheik. I've always been a fan of the underdogs, and the people that most other people are not cheering for, and so it's kind of on brand for me to, as a little kid, like
a
the
bad
Iron
guy.
Sheik.
Yeah.
And then also, I guess on brand for me is like this sort of obsessive need to really try to get to know and understand my heroes at a level that's like borderline pathological.
Right.
And by, tracking them down, getting to know them, understanding them as people. And, for me, it wasn't enough to just have these guys as heroes. Like I really wanted to know what they were like as humans and as people.
Yeah.
And so and then as I got to know the Iron Sheik's backstory, I was like, oh, this guy's got just a fascinating life.
Oh, yeah. It's a crazy story.
Gets into all kinds of issues and history and topics. And
right.
That's what drew me to. I mean, if I had met him and he was like a lot of wrestlers back in those days were not the ethnicity they were portraying, right?
Right.
You're right.
Like
most Russians.
Boris Zukov, the evil Russian Soviet henchman, was like Jim Nelson from Virginia, right? So if my hero had been Boris Zukov and I met him, I was like, hey Jim, like you grew up in like Roanoke and you played Little League, and be like, okay, like that's probably not going to be a very compelling book. But when you learn, the Iron Sheik grew up like under the Shah of Iran in the 60s and was, had his best friend potentially got killed by the Shah's secret police, and it's like, this
came over here with just a name to find.
That's amazing. That's a fascinating.
Didn't speak any English.
Yeah.
Like
just knew the name and was going to go find him to help coach wrestling or whatever. So
and then coaches the U.S. Olympic wrestling team, and then 10 years later is portraying like an agent of the Ayatollah that hates America, right?
Right.
Just all this, this myth, the myth versus the reality, and the crazy backstory is what drew me in, to his story.
So I'm not very well versed with the Sheik, so I didn't even know that about him coaching Olympic wrestling.
Well, he won a gold medal like too, right? For the U.S. in the U.S.
He won an AAU gold medal.
That's
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But you shouldn't be faulted for not knowing, because that was the whole gig, was never admit who you really are.
Right.
Yeah.
Like stay in character all the time.
That's why so many of those guys got in bar fights, right?
Well, and the thing about the bar fights is like, I take the side of like people say, wrestlers were always fighting, getting into trouble. And it's like, from what I can tell from having talked to many of them, they did not look for trouble.
No.
They wanted to go hang out and get drunk and get laid. Like pretty much most guys in whatever walk of life, right? But the thing was that back in the 70s and 80s, because they didn't admit that it was a show,
the business was protected.
A lot of athletes, football players, would go up to them and be like, hey, like your sport is fake.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they would do now they're going to fight, right?
Yeah,
right.
And then they would say like, you want to see how fake it is, and then they would hit them for real,
right?
And if you couldn't handle yourself in a real fight, the promoters didn't like you.
They would cancel. I think Bill Watts would actually said like, you're fired if you lose a bar fight, you're fired.
Was
like,
it 100%? Was it Geraldo that got smacked around?
No, that was
John Stossel.
Yeah, John Stossel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they ever get harassed or attacked, to your knowledge, for their character? Because I know that happens even in Hollywood. People get hate for playing bad, negative characters because for some reason a lot of human beings can't delineate between fantasy and reality. I imagine that carried over to wrestling, especially the Iron Sheik.
Pretty much all those guys. If you were a heel, a bad guy in the 70s and 80s, almost everyone got stabbed.
Yeah,
in character, like coming and going to the ring by either a knife or like a really sharp pen or
letter opener.
Yeah, I mean,
that's crazy.
And and so there's this question of like, did these people think it was real? And there were some that did, but I bet even a lot of the people that stabbed them didn't. I think that they knew it was not real, that it was a show. Yeah. But it's like, this is a fascinating psychological phenomenon that you can get so deep into the believing the show. Oh yeah. In that moment that you do crazy things, right? Like I think under oath those fans would say, "Oh no, wrestling's a show," but they would still stab people.
Yeah, the emotionality, I think you're right, is 100%. It's so drawing and it pulls out emotions, because I've known for obviously many, many, many years it wasn't real, but watching it, and if the performance is good and the action is good, you do get drawn into it to the degree that it's easy to get lost in the narrative that they're creating.
I had so many like ladies with oxygen tanks take a swing at me, like it was amazing though. But like when you get that,
you leave my grandmother out of this.
Yeah,
but like, my grandmother did not realize it was scripted. She hated Tojo.
I mean, there were some people that really did buy into it, but I think it's like we all know the feeling of watching like a great Rocky montage, and then you want to go bust out like 50 or 3 push-ups, right? Whatever you can do.
Absolutely.
Chris does the raw eggs.
Yeah. No, not
all at once.
Gross. Yeah. I call that drink salmonella. It's delicious. When you stop the project for the Sheik, am I correct? Is that when you went to do the wax pack?
No. Then I went to go study insects in Tahiti.
Okay. So you went the different route then. Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
And then you came back. I want to talk about the inception and the idea of the wax pack, because all of us being similar ages, the cover of that book is just nostalgia on a page for anyone that collected baseball cards. And I'm going to be honest, I thought it was a little gross. You had to try the gum, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I mean, it's almost 35 years old or whatever. Right. It's like, you said it still was gross. So, I mean, it holds up.
Yeah.
How did that idea happen? Was it just like an epiphany one day? You're like, I'll just do this.
It was at some point it was an epiphany, but it was really born out of the idea actually that I liked the guys that were the underdogs. Mm-hmm. And I knew that in a pack of cards, most of the guys are going to be underdogs.
Right.
So it was like a way to write about the guys that you could never in a million years convince a publisher to do a book about.
Right.
Oh.
If I was like, I want to write a book about Don Carmen and Rance Mullenix, they'd be like, well, go fuck yourself.
Who wants to read that? Are you crazy?
Yeah. So, but if you wrap it up in, this is a pack, and it's whoever's in the pack, those are the guys you track down, and something about the pack, just felt book-like. I mean, it's got 15 cards, and there's 15 chapters in a book. And generally, it just sort of lent itself perfectly as a device to what I really wanted to do, which was to write about guys who are kind of unsung heroes or not really known very well, and really capture that thrill of the randomness, the uncertainty, the excitement of opening up a pack.
And you opened several packs before you
just didn't want a bunch of dead guys, right?
Right. So I didn't mix between packs, but I did open up several. So I, and picked the pack that like would work the best for this kind of thing.
What I thought was pretty clever too about the book is like the journey. To me, the journey becomes the story, and not necessarily like the players. So it's really like when I was in an original band and you'd play some covers to get people to come out and listen, and then you play your own music. Like I thought it was kind of like mixing it up like that, where the journey is the story in this, and it's just such a great. There's ups and downs. There's the people need to go out and listen to it. I won't go into the Carlton Fisk story, but that was some of the most baller shit I've ever read or listened to in my entire life. Like,
admittedly, I've not gotten to that part of the book yet.
We'll talk about it off air. But people, I'm just telling you, go find the wax pack for the Carlton Fisk story.
Yeah, every day I wake up and check my phone to see if there's a whatever the area code is in Sarasota.
You're like, it's gonna happen, man. It's gonna happen.
It's coming.
So how many? How many miles did you end up doing for the Wax Pack total?
Well, Wax Pack was 11,341, and six pack was 12,525.
And did you keep track of coffee in both of those, or one?
Because I did both, but I didn't really make it part of the story as much in the six pack because it was not as linear. Like the Wax Pack really is the story of like 60 days on the road.
Right.
Yeah.
And the six pack is more like, it doesn't really matter as much the sequence of these stops because I fly to Puerto Rico and I, do some follow-up stuff. And
when you were writing or when you were keeping track of the coffee cups, I don't know if you're a Futurama fan, but there was one episode where Fry had like 100 cups of coffee, and I was going to wonder if you were going to freeze time and be able to do some cool shit, but I guess it didn't happen.
Something.
I did have my notebook and my tally, so
that's pretty awesome, man. Steve Yeager, which Shepard can go ahead and vomit. Yeah, just because Jägermeister's gross. What's funny, man, is we just did Major League. So when I'm listening to this audiobook,
Duke Temple,
and like you were like talking about Steve Yeager, I was like,
yes.
wait a minute. Like I remember researching that, and then I was like, holy shit, that's the dude that trained them in Major League and like put him in a mini camp or whatever. And,
is he the one that said that Wesley Snipes couldn't throw a ball?
Yeah,
I think he said he wasn't as fast as he could.
Yeah,
he wasn't very fast.
But he looked fast in slow
motion. But he looked fast.
But I thought about some of the stuff you said because one of the quotes from the documentary I watched, Steve Yeager, when they have the film scene where they run out on the field and all the fans are cheering, like Steve turns over when they come back, and I forgot what actor it was, and he was like, dude, that was awesome. And he's like, yep, you get to do that 162 games a year in the bigs. Like he was still like, relishing in that feeling of going out there and feeling the adulation and cheering and everything.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Yeager was just an old school, tough guy. Like, I remember he told me, I don't know if I put this in the book or not, but that he didn't like the rule change where now you can't have collisions at home plate because he's like, it kind of trivialized like all the sacrifices that he made with his body with all those collisions, right? Because that was just like that happened all the time. Guys just steamrolling. Which I remember, I remember when I was in Little League, I remember thinking like, and I was a pretty scrawny kid. But I remember thinking, this is funny. Like you could, like it's totally condoned to just run into someone, just like full speed and just like light them up and
mow them down.
Yeah,
and like there's no pad. I mean, there's no protection.
No, man.
And until those moms come off the bleachers.
But I mean, like that's what you were not only like allowed to do it, you were told to do it. If you didn't do it and you were out, you were in trouble.
Right.
For not running these kids over and possibly ruining the rest of their lives.
Right.
not a big deal.
I mean, that would make a really interesting thing to go back and research is like home plate collisions, right? Because it's a forgotten part of the game.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man. I think Buster Posey was the last. I think his injury is the one that did it, right? Like, when he got really hurt. But yeah, that was part of it. Even
second base, right? It was the Chase Utley rule.
Yeah,
that because someone came in hard or someone came in hard a few years ago, and no more second base.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, so in your Always Sunny adventure, there's some Chase Utley,
nice,
and Ryan Howard in there. You're gonna enjoy. Nice. So just keep watching.
Like they're actually in the show.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
and some Wade Boggs.
Yeah, there's the Wade Boggs episode. But so
to look forward to.
I don't know why, and this is just kind of like an inside joke maybe with us. But the player that I swear to God you said Al Cowlings when you were pronouncing the OJ guy, and so when you said his name because I wasn't familiar with the player, I was like, "Is that the OJ guy?"
Yeah.
And then you went when you talked to the person in the school, and they were like, "Is that the guy that was driving OJ?" And I was like, "Holy shit!" Like that's exactly what I thought.
Well, the funniest part of that story with OJ is that I don't know if you remember this, like the Ford Bronco chase. And like the police are trying to call the Bronco.
That's where the joke comes from.
And AC picks up the phone, right? And he's like, "You know who this is?
I'm AC, damn it!
Yeah, I'm AC, damn it!
I'm AC. You know who I am, damn it!"
That's why we remember that is that because Tim Meadows did that shit on SNL, and he'd be like, "I'm AC, damn it!" And so much if I meet someone named AC, they'll be like, "Hey, I'm AC," and I'm like, "I'm AC, damn it!" And they're like, "What?" I'm like, God. Just get my brain. It's a better place. But yeah, man, that shit's so funny. So when you're reading that, like all that shit's going through my head. Like when you said his name, I was like, Al Cowlings? That's crazy. Being around like wrestling and stuff, like I've met like, you know, a lot of guys on their way down, and some guys like on their way back up. But when you talked about the lesser known people kind of being like more appreciative and being more like giving and being happier in life, I started thinking back like on all the people I met, and I'm like, damn, that's true. Like there's the ones that really weren't like the ones that were like superstars are like not going to talk to you and kind of like you're a burden, and the other ones they're stoked you remember them.
Right. With the exception of Kevin Nash, right?
Yeah, no, Kevin Nash was awesome. When I got to meet Kevin Nash, he was super cool.
Well, it goes back to Dan Ugler, right? Like, it's like the guy, I think success does spoil most people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And goes to their head. And, you know, and I mean, that in both books, I would argue that Jaime Kokenauer in baseball and Jose Luis Rivera in wrestling are more well-adjusted and happier than Carlton Fisk and Hulk Hogan.
Right, exactly.
Crazy.
Well, I feel like, too, like they don't feel the more famous you get, the more guarded you are because you feel like you have all this to lose. Like you're, especially with journalists or whatever, you're like, should I even talk to this guy? What if he says this? What if I'm misquoted? Whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
But also just don't be a dick and everything will be fine. I don't know what people's problems
generally are. Like you said though, I think like when the more you gain in this sport, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but the more you have to lose, at least mentally, right? Like you think there's everything is so much more high stakes that people are going to judge you, or that you'll fall a notch or two or all the way.
But I think also like even the guys that were not stars experience a degree of fame that like none of us will experience that still makes it hard to go on with the rest of your life. Because like like let's say like a Jaime Kokenauer, a baseball player, he may have only played like 4 years for the Brewers, but he was probably like the star of the high school team.
Yeah.
And you know, in the minor leagues. And so like you are used to being really good and really kind of, you know, venerated. And so like, I mean, that's one thing I'm always interested in writing about these guys is like that transition in their 30s or 40s, or in people like Ric Flair, their 70s, right? Like of like how you move on, and Ric Flair never moves on. Right. So,
have you met Ric Flair?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think? I
mean, he's this, everything you see on TV. He's just the same guy. Like, he's a caricature of a human.
Yeah, I had a different experience with him. We won't go into it on the air. It was not good.
What I'm saying is not that compliment. I mean, I'm basically saying that he carries himself like the womanizing.
He does, and it's just entitled. Like entitled is the perfect word for that. For a guy that was really good at his craft in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and I think I like what Brad said about him being just a real person, because like in that sort of like, I know a lot of people look up to Ric Flair, but what he said is true, and Chris's experience to me mirrors that, because he is like you said, he is human. It's humanizing. He is a person, right? Yeah. And you meet all different types of people, arrogant, humble, whatever the case may be, and he is sort of a microcosm, you know, of that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You know, people ask like, what are baseball players like? What are wrestlers like? And you realize like any job or any group, there's like some are assholes and some are good guys, right? It's like it's no different than any of your workplace or any profession, you know. And they're all more famous, but you still have the ones that are good guys and the ones that are jerks, and you know.
You're right. Yeah, all people. Correct.
So I'm interested. How did you make the jump from journalism to writing your own book? Did you get commissioned up front for it?
Yeah.
You pitched the ideas to a publisher, or how did that work?
So, as a after my magazine thing, I've always been a freelance writer.
Okay.
And it's funny because I was trained in writing magazine articles and working in a magazine. And it's interesting, in my career, I've actually never written like a long magazine article. I've written hundreds of short articles and 2, you know, books. Mm-hmm. And it's like the opposite of what I set out to do. It just turned out that way. So I had been writing mostly short things, and I had the Wax Pack idea. So I wrote a book proposal, which was itself a really long document. And the idea in nonfiction book publishing is, anyone can write a proposal and you send that to an agent. First, you have to get an agent, and that's hard.
Yeah.
And then if you get the agent, then the agent is your liaison to directly pitch the publishers with the proposal. And then if you're lucky enough to get a deal from a publisher, then they give you a contract and an advance, usually up front. But like the Wax Pack, I went through 2 agents and got rejected like 38 times. And it took 4 years, and I ended up getting a deal with the University of Nebraska. My advance was $2,000. So after all that time and work, that's not a lot of money.
That doesn't even cover your travel.
Not even close. So luckily that book sold well enough that I made a decent amount in royalties.
That's good.
And also made it really easier to get a much better deal my second go round.
Yeah.
So the 6-pack is published by a major New York publisher, and for that book, I got a $150,000 book deal, which
nice, man,
is
much
huge.
nicer.
Yeah.
But even then, you realize like, okay, 150 grand is great, but 15% goes to your agent, and then it's broken over 4 years, so you're only getting like 32 grand a year over 4 years.
Right. You got to do like the Hunter S. Thompson thing where you snort at least like a sixth of it.
At least, right? So
man, those guys had it made. Like that was the life in the 70s. Those reporters, because back then magazines paid really well, and like they would send someone like a Hunter Thompson to cover one article, and they might they're paying him good money for the article, and they're paying all his expenses for a few weeks at nice hotels that. Those days are gone, right?
I was gonna say those don't exist, right? Like it's
magazine industry is way different now.
Does not exist. Even book tours, like I had to fund my own book tour. I had to pay for all my own travel and hotels. Back in the day, the publishers would sometimes pay for a lot of that stuff. So it's hard to live on $32,000 a year, especially in the Bay Area. So I've never been able to just do that. And then even now, the 6-pack, unless it starts selling a lot better, it's sold okay, but it hasn't like taken off.
Mm-hmm.
And so the challenge with that is that like it would be hard to do another book if this book doesn't do better, right?
Right.
So it's a really
I
don't recommend anyone go into this business.
I feel like you've hit the demo. You hit the demo though, because the wrestling demographic is like insanely loyal. If you can get to them,
it's true. The challenge has been like I feel like I've hit the hardcore wrestling fans.
Right.
You guys had John Finkel on, right?
Right.
Yeah, and he and I have, we've both done a good job of like getting out to the wrestling people that listen to wrestling podcasts, it's the lapsed fans that don't watch wrestling anymore, but watched it when they were kids, that I think would really love my book, but they don't know about it.
Because and it's like, how do you? Because like nobody in their profile is like, used to like wrestling in the 80s,
but there's like millions of people like that.
Yeah, it's people our age. It's our demographic. It's just like we have the same thing with the podcast. We're like, how do we reach those people?
Yeah,
and the answer is YouTube says no.
So you have any interest in doing anything outside of sports?
Yeah, well,
or sports entertainment.
Yeah, no,
nice.
I really like the whole. The thing I've been working on now is this my website, thebradpack.com, and like kind of doing more new content with, like I just was last week was interviewing some former baseball players to do like video interviews, right, where like sitting down with former players, and not so I don't have to write a whole book, just talking to them. I can produce more content. So I have like a Patreon site now, and I'm building that.
Oh, nice!
And so that's fun to do some shorter stuff for a while. But then I have this whole other career in science and in studying insects and all that, and I'd love to write about that It's at some point, but
yeah, man,
it's one of these things where it's like you don't want to make that shift until you're ready, because if you've got momentum in this area, you want to keep it going for a while.
So you have a PhD,
yeah?
Correct. What is that in?
It's in entomology, studying bugs.
Okay.
Oh man, that's cool.
So I discovered all these species of insects in Tahiti. Actually named one after Harrison Ford.
What? You're kidding me? What's it called?
What's
the full name of it?
The full name.
Yeah, you just put it in Latin, so you add an I at the end, so it's like Harrison Ford I.
Oh, nice.
Harrison Ford.
I'll be clipping that in.
I thought you were going to say, and it was the dog's name.
Oh yeah.
I want to know what kind of bug it is, real quick. Like,
they're just these really pretty. They're green and yellow and pink, like little tiny bugs that live in Tahiti, and they don't bite. They're kind of like a beetle, but not as the wings are not as thick. So
how did you discover this? Like, where did you find these things? Like, what?
So the thing, the dirty little secret about new species is that if you go to the right places on Earth, like any of us could do it, because now you might not want to do it because it takes many years.
No, I don't. But I want it. I absolutely don't want. But this is awesome.
The thing is that we've only discovered like 20% of life on Earth, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Right. We spend all this money trying to find life on other planets, but we only know 20% of the species on this planet.
Yeah, exactly.
But most of them are tiny, right? Because you probably not going to find a new elephant species out there.
Right.
Hard
Okay.
Maybe
now
underwater.
That makes sense.
But if you go to a remote island like I did, and you climb a mountain like I did, and you shake a tree that very few people have ever shaken, and these insects have been living in isolation at the top of a mountain on a remote island for millions of years, evolving, then it's that no one's really seen them before, right? So then once you have the bugs, then you have to take them back to the lab, and you have to dissect them and look at them under the microscope, and then look at their DNA. Then you have to compare it to all the other specimens that have been collected in all the museums around the world, and you basically do a comparison, and you're like, okay, like no one's ever seen this before.
Like, how big of a rush was that when you figured out, like, dude, I'm about to start naming some insects? Like,
it's pretty cool. I mean, I got to say, like, it feels almost like time travel, because you're like, oh, I feel like I'm in like, the 1800s.
21 gigawatts.
Like an old explorer.
Yeah, man.
That's unbelievable.
Finding new stuff.
All right. So you, speaking of an old explorer, you've mentioned Harrison Ford twice now. So was Indiana Jones like a big thing?
Yeah. Why Harrison Ford? I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Dude.
I was more of a Star Wars.
All right.
I was a Han Solo guy.
Let's go.
And so I always liked Harrison. I just thought Harrison Ford was like we had this, and this is a great endless debate for anyone of our age, is like, is Harrison Ford a great actor or just a great movie star? And
Also, Han shot first.
I would
Han did shoot first.
Yeah.
Don't at me.
I would say actor.
Yeah.
Well, I can see both sides.
It's a good debate.
It's a good debate.
Wasn't there something with Tom Selleck? Was Tom Selleck offered Han Solo? No, he was
Indiana
offered
Jones.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones.
But he had Magnum going, I think, at the time.
Well, a friend of mine made the comparison. He's like, if Harrison Ford was a band, or who would he be? And they were like, Aerosmith. And I was like, okay. Maybe
I can see that.
Spanning some decades, like
consistent through the years.
Yeah, I like that. So I got to commend you in the six-pack, going to an actual wrestling school.
Oh, yeah.
Getting in the ring and taking the car crash bumps, which I was like, dude, good for you. Like, that brought a smile across my face whenever, you're going up. Because I was like, people think it's a trampoline. And each ring varies. Like, some of them, the one I trained in was an old boxing ring, so it just felt like concrete.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it was great.
I was going to ask you, can you both talk about your experiences for those of you who've done it? Because I've never done it.
For me, it was the first back bump. Like, they make you do like you mentioned in the book, they make you do the rolls. We did a thing called a falling tree, which is basically like a handstand. and you fall flat on your back to distribute the weight, and that is to simulate like a backdrop, like you work up to going higher. A regular back bump, which they tell you to tuck your chin, they tell you to hit everything. You're not going to do it the first time, and you're going to whiplash. And it's like, so the next day after my first training, and it was only an hour, like, and I'd already paid this dude like a couple of grand. Well, I'd paid him installments towards a couple of grand, but I go home and I wake up and I'm just like, I'm in a neck brace. Like I can't move, and I'm just having to rotate like that. And I thought to myself, that was fucking awesome. I'm going to do that for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
I spent some time in boxing rings, but our goal was to not hit the mat.
Yeah.
So what was your experience, man?
Well, the thing about a boxing ring too is like, so in boxing, when you really do get knocked out, like that ring is so hard, you probably get knocked out again, concussed again when you fall, right?
That whiplash, man.
I think nobody thinks about that, actually. Like, so you get hit really hard, and let's say you're almost there, but when you're falling, falling.
Watch all their heads. It's when they go like that, like their head like whips. So what was? Did you did full on like back bumps? I know you did rolls. Like
I wanted. I mean, they weren't going to let me do it for my own good on the first day, and I only did one day. Of like, I always was curious, like just getting body slammed, like because that's going to be a little extra from just your own self-induced back bump,
right?
But I mean, let's just say that like. I remember my eyes were big when I started, like, oh, I wonder what it's like to jump off the top rope. And by the end, I was like rolling out of the ring, like,
yep, nope,
I'm done. Like,
how old were you at the time?
Well, this is just like 2 years ago. So,
okay. Yeah.
And and then hitting the ropes. So I actually videotaped that. And I was watching it back, and I'm like, I look like Hulk Hogan when he was like 60, doing his last match. I was so slow.
It's a dance. People don't realize like the running the ropes is a dance. It's like depending on the size of the ring, it's like 3 steps or 4 steps.
Yeah,
it's 1, 2, 3 turn, 1, 2, 3 turn, and you got to like when you get faster at it, you don't look like a baby giraffe learning to walk, but like. Right. In the beginning, you just do. And those ropes, I think the one you had, and the one that I mainly had was like the steel cable with a garden hose around it with tape on it. So it's like that thing hurts going against it, and you have to build up a tolerance to that, and you have to – it's a great career path, guys. You should go do it. And I just did it part-time for no money, basically. So cool.
I bumped into the corner of my kitchen island the other day and immediately went for the Advil. I was like, "Oh, this is going to be bad tomorrow."
I know we've got to go over to a segment real quick, and I'm really glad that you just started walking Always in Sunny Philadelphia, because this is shit stuck in my head this week.
One of the things I like doing most is banging whores. I go out and bang a lot of whores.
All right, so that's been stuck in my head this week. I'm glad I could share that with you guys.
There was literally
there's no segue.
No
well, that's they get stuck in your head like every Thursday and Friday, right?
Whatever. It is what it is. So, so me and Leaf, we watched a MTV documentary that had one of the guys that you had, Tony Atlas.
Oh, you watched that recently?
We watched it when we were growing up, and I don't. Sometimes when you watch movies, there's like weird lines stick out in your head.
Yeah.
So he was cooking pork chops, and he just looks down, and it just pauses, and he's like, "It's very good. These are very good." And like that was like anytime we hear Tony Atlas, like we look at each other, we're like, "Very good."
We quote that to this very day.
That had to have been, man. It's 20-something years ago, man.
Had to have been 20 plus years ago. He sticks that in our mind just like constantly. Just as a figure who was just iconic, like in all types of respects,
and not getting too much in it, because again, like people, please go out, listen, buy the 6-pack. But he was very giving, it seemed, with his time.
Tony was very generous and authentic, and he's probably right now cooking a pork chop and saying very good.
It's very good. It's very good.
Like in the one sense, Tony, is a pretty simple guy. And the other sense, like if you read that chapter, some of the stuff he says is like very simple, but very profound.
Yeah.
Just very like, you're like, oh yeah, like that makes a lot of sense.
He's had awesome. So many like He's had a very busy life, to put it lightly.
Yeah, hard life, a lot of adversity.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to be as upbeat as he is great.
Dude, still staying in shape, right? You know, you said you put up a personal best there, right? I will divulge that from the book, but
right. I mean, I never bench pressed that, but he, when you got Tony Atlas like screaming in your face, like,
what are you gonna do, man?
You'll do all kinds of things.
You don't fail. You will not fail.
You don't fail at all. We'll go ahead and start to wrap up a little bit. You talked about this on Talk is Jericho, and when we did our Hulk Hogan episode a long time ago, don't go back and watch it. It's absolutely awful.
It's trash.
We were still figuring this out. But Hulk Hogan, when he told, and again, just being around a lot of these guys, when I listened to the story again about Hiro Matsuda and they're breaking his leg, I was like, there's no fucking way. Like, I get it. Like, and you're never going to change that, and you shouldn't, because it's wrestling. I get it, but there's no way. Sprain an ankle, which I believe is like the conclusion you came to or whatever. Yes, but forever it was, he broke my leg or whatever. And I'm like, do you know how much torque you would have to do to break Terry Bollea's leg?
As a monster.
Yeah. Did you snap his tibia? Like, what did we do here? So I'm glad that you actually got to dive. Not just because a lot of people have done interviews with Hogan, but you actually got to do interviews with people around him.
Yeah.
And I thought that was way more interesting because you got more of you didn't get the stereotypical. I mean, we talked about this with John. Sometimes when you talk to certain guys, they will tell the same canned stories every interview.
Right.
Nothing changes. And I feel like you would have got that with Hogan. He would have just.
What would have been interesting, though, is I would have push back on Hogan.
Well,
and I don't know how that would have gone. I don't.
Yeah, but I feel like you have like a lot of journalistic integrity, which I respect, and we appreciate that for sure, because you did have some uncomfortable conversations in the book with people, but that's part of it, but talking to people around Terry is something that I haven't ever heard anyone do.
Right.
So
thank you. That was I was very proud of how that chapter came about, because there's been a lot of coverage of Hulk Hogan, but for all the stories he's told, like, I had never seen someone talk to the people in Ruckus or talk to talk to his childhood friends, and what the stories that are out there are largely from his own autobiographies and that kind of thing. So
it was really cool to get a different perspective, especially like with some of the stuff. I won't go into it. Again, go get the book. If you don't get the book, we will find you.
We will.
We will. We won't do anything, but we'll find you and be like, hey, here's this book.
This is a great platform for you to sell your books on, because, I mean, there at least 3 people are going to buy your book.
All right.
All 3 in here right now. But the whole Ruckus thing, that was a really good story in it. I guess we'll go ahead and wind it down, man. We want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. We don't want to keep you too much longer. Guys, go out. Wax Pack, I believe it's on Spotify. It's on Audible. Go grab 6-pack. TheBradPack.com. You want to plug your social?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Grab a 6-pack and then grab the 6-pack.
There it is. For some booze of the week.
Put it together. Twitter, Instagram at BradPackBooks, and as you said, TheBradPack.com. Great to hear from people. I love when people say, "Hey, I read your book, and here's what I think," and so love to get that feedback.
Awesome, man. And like we do every episode, guys, we're going to go and end this with our Norm Macdonald clip of the week.
And OJ pal Al Cowling said this week that in looking for the truth in the OJ Simpson case, he sometimes talks to a picture of Nicole Brown Simpson, something that in the past would have gotten him killed by OJ.
She's